You don't build a partnership like this. You don't try. So it was a journey. This is where all my stories come into play. How do you grow from 4 to 400 with clients like this? How do you have clients for 20 years?
Hello everyone, my name is Maciej. I'm the leader of Analytics Experience Competency Group, and this is C&F Talks, a place where experts discuss about ideas and challenges from the perspective of an IT partner. And my guest today is Piotr Pielasa. Hello, Piotr.
Hello, hi.
So tell me who you are, what are your responsibilities at our company?
Sure. Piotr Carlos Pielasa, I go by Carlos, so you probably skip to that anyway. I'm with C&F over 20 years now, and I've been everything from the pedestrian developer or support specialist when I was young and thin and naive, up until now. Now I'm C-level at C&F, which is board of directors level. I'm responsible for delivery of all what we do in terms of solutions to our clients. And it's 20 years of experience and not so thin anymore. Let's put it this way. A lot less naive. So I've been places, I've seen things, I have tales to tell.
Waiting for those tales.
Yeah, particularly in the area of, how do you, because when I was joining, the company was size 4. I was the 4th employee. And how do you grow such a company from Poland for 4 people to 400 people, and from working with one client to working with many clients, one of the biggest out there, competing with the biggest competitors out there. Being able to witness this myself, I think it's a huge material for a book, maybe. But
we have only some time today, but we can also extend it to a few episodes.
Sure.
But let's start from the very beginning, because you have started the cooperation with the client number 1. This is still our biggest client to date, right?
Correct.
So you have seen it all, and I'm very curious to hear about the most difficult implementation in your history, in the history of our company.
Oh yeah, the most difficult, you say. I guess that would take us back to 2019, just before pandemic, which the most difficult project or program, if you will, was let's call it a project D, because we cannot be too specific about the names and the client names. The confidentiality agreements apply here. So project D was, it had two difficulties within it. One, it was very complex. I tell more about what this complexity means. The number 2 was it was enormous scale, both for our client and for C&F as well. So from the get-go, we knew it's gonna be operation on the scale we haven't managed before, nor did client, and that was one big item that you have to consider at the very beginning. And if you add to this complexity that we'll dive into more, it's a very risky situation, because you need to spin off a lot of people, be prepared on both sides, and they cannot go wrong. They need to be organized very well, because ineffectiveness in such a large team will cost you a lot money-wise. Basically, this needs to be a machine that works from the very beginning at the very big scale very well.
So this was the first black swan in the company, where we had to scale up a lot, like double the number of employees in a very short time frame.
Obviously, growing from 4 to 400, we've been doubling in several years in our numbers, and so there's been kind of black swans every now and then to be able to grow like this. So the fact of growing itself wasn't so unusual for us anymore. Let's say those swans were grayish at this point. So we, as a company, we knew we need to grow. We knew how to do this. We had methods to scale up in certain areas and so on, in certain pace. This time around, this 2019 Project D, this was one that, it's less of a problem to double your team when you're 40 people. When you're already 200 people, double them in 3 weeks. That's the challenge that we needed to do, for instance. So we tested our ability to scale up with this project. We tested it all the way, but we kind of reached the level where our imagination wasn't going there, and yet we did it.
Okay, so what was the main challenge, main problem of Project D? In fact, Project D sounds like a zombie movie. So, what was the challenge?
So there were a couple. The complexity was the one that I mentioned before. So let me dive a little bit more into the complexity of it. Complexity meaning the project was about digitalizing manufacturing operations for a huge pharma client. And that alone is a challenge on its own, because if you imagine what a company that produces drugs manages, they have dozens of sites, of manufacturing sites where they produce drugs, and they're of different kinds, and usually they're acquired by lots of divestitures or mergers and acquisitions of sorts. So it's like having a couple dozens of companies in one company, if you will. They're managed different way. They have different operations. They actually do different things, because you don't, any site isn't equal to another. There are several kinds of those. There are biological ones that you need to produce drugs that are active in biologically, but there are also very chemical drugs. Different sites do that. Those sites produce ingredients for other sites. There's a lot of complexity alone in that, and every such site is operated like a small company, and yet as an enterprise you want to integrate them. You want to do things similarly. You want to be able to manage certain processes on higher level and so on. And so big companies deal with this in some ways, but digitalizing the way they're dealing, this is the goal they were after. How do we even streamline it more? How do we integrate these sites more? How do we help manage things at sites, even the normal operations of producing, of changing shifts? How do we optimize them using software? Because right now we have processes that work, but they work. It's very human-oriented, very paper-oriented processes. How do you the next step and digitalize them? So in a nutshell, that was the big challenge of the complexity, and the software that you would need to produce would need to fit like 40 companies at one go, if you will. You have to accept all their flavors in your software to still have one version of the process, but applicable to so many various sites.
From what I remember, there was a process in place, a paper process presented, or a concept of this digitalization, right? But the key was to think of a real solution, real implementation using real software in order to go live with this concept, and having in mind such diversity of different plants, different environments.
Yes.
A lot of people there, a lot of different stakeholders. So how to assess, how to estimate such big unknown adventure, because this was a project, a first of its kind for us as a company, but also for the client.
Yes, correct. So first, one correction: this paper process wasn't just a concept; it was a living process already. However, adopted to a certain extent by multiple sites. So digitalizing it would yet another level, because then things become serious. There is no more room for interpretation. Software won't allow it. It will be then executed more thoroughly and more universally, if you will. So that's one correction. And how do you take stab at estimating such a monster? Because also another thing you need to understand: you don't get to pick few smaller processes to digitalize. You either do it all and you switch everybody to this is how we do things now. You have to have the critical mass of processes, if you will, that come together. You cannot you cannot start small, unfortunately, because it will not be adopted. It needs to be a transforming change that already has some critical mass. So if we were playing poker, that would be we're already starting with high stakes at the very beginning. There is no small blinds. So how do you get stabbed at something like this? First thing that is really obvious is you have to go agile. And from what I saw through these 20 years working with big companies, it used to be different. There was more appetite to the risk on the client side and outsource the risk to partners, to those who need to execute. And there were more big bids like RFPs that were there still are, of course, it's part of the procurement process. However, it was more about fixed cost, fixed bid before, even for large programs, which of course caused that any risk, anything that is not sure would be translated to just more money in the bid, and then vendors would just bid higher and higher, and this wasn't very cost effective. So what I see more and more, bigger projects are still posted as RFCs, but in time and material mode. So client from the beginning accepts that it needs to be part of the journey, part of the risk management, but it's cheaper that way, basically. This is especially if the goal is big, but somewhat not defined well, which means a journey of making it more tangible and more executable together. It's a journey that you start. Mm-hmm. So how do you estimate it? You first estimate the bandwidth. So with what crew you start, mm-hmm. This will determine the pace of the work that you can plan. So you have to have a rough idea of the scope. You have to appreciate all the flavors of work that need to happen, from the very technical one that we're good at, but to very organizational one that typically belongs to the client side. So it also cannot be understaffed on the client side as well, which we already know after these learnings. So you define this pipe, the width of the pipe, if you will, and then you start pumping work through this pipe. And the question is, how long will it last? That's overall how long you need to execute this work. This will shape your final cost.
Also, have we been aware of the size of the project from the very beginning? And moreover, was our client aware of it also? Because this was something very, very new and a very huge program. And I believe that this was a very big challenge also to estimate the results and the work needed from the client perspective.
Correct. It wasn't as clear for the client as well. To be frank, the client tried to begin the program that we're talking about, Project D, in some other setup with another partner, and those early attempts were ending in a lot of technical depth, and the reason for it was they underestimated the bandwidth they need to deal with here. So the moment we were invited to the project, we took over the technical part, but also there was a major reorganization of the project from the client side, and new budgets, new bandwidth was established, new baseline of what the team sizes should be, what we're dealing with here. So we were already benefiting from some of the experiences of the previous attempts, which allowed us to appreciate the full scale of the work that we'll need to, well, not the work, but the bandwidth we'll need to provide, if you will.
Okay, so we had to learn a bit to kind of optimize the work in order to arrange the whole setup to work with such big number of people on our side. So this was Agile. We implemented SAFe framework for that.
Correct.
But also to create a pipeline of cooperation with tens of different stakeholders on the client side. And this was a pre-pandemic time, but as soon as we learned how to set it up and streamline the process, the COVID pandemic hit, right? So what was the impact on the project and our approach?
And that's what actually caused me to bring this project as the most challenging one, because if you think about, such a big project and complex one, being a black swan for a company like ours, then the fact that just about where we're supposed to start the project, the pandemic hit and changed all the rules. That's like corresponding to a black swan meeting, if you will, which is very, very rare occurrence of events. Maybe a side story here, not sure if you know where the black swan term is coming from. It's a Latin saying from like a 2nd century in Rome. So from Europe, basically, where in Europe, this saying actually assumed very rare occurrence of an event, something almost impossible, because Europeans didn't know about existence of black swans at all. It was only like 17th century where some Dutch sailors in Australia noticed a group of black swans, and this is where they actually proven that okay, they exist, but it's very rare. But like those Dutch sailmen found a group of black swans. This is how we felt within the project. We're doing something unique, something first time in the company on scale without precedence. So his client, and now this happens. So of course, we all know a lot of things have changed. Companies always write those business continuity plans for rare disasters like pandemic. Most of the times, this is very theoretical exercise. However, us working for very regulated clients, C&F works for a lot of pharma industry, which are very regulated clients, and we're audited a lot. We had those plans always up to date and well maintained, and they work perfectly. If you remember, this is we switched seamlessly to remote mode. Of course, there were other unknowns. People working from very distant locations. We have people being sick. We have on client side people not available for same reasons. And yet the project needed to continue, and even more so, it needed to continue because of pandemic. We're actually working with manufacturing sites, and they're actually involved in producing drugs that were so much needed in pandemic at some point. And being able to streamline at least by 1% then the cycle of producing meant huge gains for our clients in production sites, and they were at stretch at the time. Another reason that the demand for our software went by like 1000%. So if you think about such integration in a big client, it's also not an easy sell internally to deploy centralized system that unifies the ways you're working, you're planning at the sites, you're reporting to your management and so on. So there is internal resistance for change, of course, and they're doing important things, and they don't want to be disrupted. The change is not so welcome on manufacturing sides. The whole controlling is about not changing, basically. So change is not what they like a lot. And yet, this time around, because of pandemic, because of those processes being very manual and people meeting physically at sites to even make a shift change between two groups of people who were working 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., between those 4 p.m. to I guess 10 p.m. Yeah, and the second shift to take over, there were just big huddles on the corridors where people physically were meeting, and they had to follow these processes to make the shift happen. And now if you could do something for them not to meet physically, that decreased the risk of them getting sick and effectively not showing up at work that still was needed to happen. So that's what was driving this internal demand. And this demand was transferred to us as well. Now you do faster, better, and oh, by the way, you still need to be compliant, And like I said, compliance in manufacturing sites. So the way you produce software, you control whether it's not introducing a bad change. Similarly, like you control quality of drugs. They adopted the practices from manufacturing to controlling software, which in modern world is a bit change preventive, if you will. So from one hand, we needed to go agile to be effective cost-wise, plus the goal wasn't clear. The whole concept of what we're building needed to mature
and adapt.
It required multiple iterations with stakeholders. The whole agile principle where you deliver an increment of work, but you show it transparently to those who need to use it. You capture feedback, you adapt, you make another increment, and so on. In an environment that is actually all about not changing things, all about keeping them as they were because they were tested, proven, and we need to work like a machine all the time. It needs to be predictable and repeatable, and so on. So that marriage was something that took a while to happen. Took a lot of therapy, if you will, a couple months of therapy to marry these two concepts: agile delivery framework, like SAFe, and compliance that was coming from good manufacturing practices. In a nutshell, it took a while, but also a cooperation and open mind of people on the client side who are responsible for this, because it's them who needed to thoroughly understand what we're doing and set a new boundary, new rules, how we can build things and deploy still compliantly, but much faster than before.
These were some of the challenges, right? Because we also discovered those challenges along the way. It's not like we've been aware of everything from the very beginning, and we've been partnering with our client hand in hand, working on this solution and learning along the way, adapting along the way. So what were besides of the resistance, compliance to specific setup and security and everything else, the biggest challenges and risks along the way, what we learned along the way delivering such project?
So maybe first I'll comment on the fact that you don't get such a project just like that. The company who is trying to do such a transformative change, large scale digitalization for the very core of their business, which is manufacturing things, drugs in particular. So you do it in an agile way, which means the contract says, give me good people and we work together, but you're not entirely responsible for the outcome. We take this with you. That's a partnership, and you don't build a partnership like this. You don't try. So it was a journey. This is where all my stories come into play. How do you grow from 4 to 400 with clients like this? How do you have clients for 20 years from top 500 Fortune companies? So this is about relationships. This is about building trust. It's like I often compare it to this game of Minesweeper in Windows, where you discover mines by going through the field, which is hidden mines. You just get a piece of information. There is a mine in a proximity, right? And you lose if you just make one mistake. And building this trust over years is similar. You have to succeed continuously to build your reputation. One misstep may cause that you lose this reputation, and you're not considered. You have to build this history. You take small steps first. So at some point you are recognized at the level where you can be trusted with something so big, even for the client, even experimental for the client, and you're invited to this experiment because you've proven yourself in smaller cases, and it's been a while. So that's how you come to the place where you can be invited to such a big experiment. And speaking about other challenges or learnings that we have from this big project, something to our clients, for sure you cannot underestimate your own effort. There's basically two paths. You either, as a client, you either have a clear vision what you're trying to do. It's innovative, you want to go your own path in this. This is where you need to staff up on your own side have this vision shared with a lot of peers, have it vested before you start implementing it. It needs to be mature enough before you hit the ground and start building things. But then you need to pick a trusted partner, not someone who you're confident to experiment with, if you will. That's one path, the innovative path. The other path is if you don't have this or you don't have the manpower to staff it on the client side, on the owning side of the solution, then you should rather look for standard ways, proven solutions. Then you don't need a trusted partner for experiment. You need a partner who is proven to have delivered standard solution multiple times, and you go for non-innovative but safe, and then you don't have to have such a long bench on your side to own it. So after this, we've had other clients trying to build similar things, and we are more experienced ourselves right now. But what we see is that we also sometimes need to help the client to own the solution, because it's various things. It's even like evangelizing yourself, your own business structures on what Agile is and how you fund it, because there is no cost of the whole solution known at first, right? And that's not a usual concept for procurement, to not know how much things cost. They may cost from X to Y, and it's a very long way from X to Y. It's not a widely accepted concept, if you will, for procurement departments at big companies.
But this is about stakeholder management. One of the key elements of such wide programs, it's working with resistance inside of the company on the client side.
Yes, and you have to have people for this, people who will understand enough technology to be able to convey the message to the other levels of stakeholders who will buy into this model. It's known to be very effective, but it's not how you usually buy things and so on. It has an element to risk. You don't see the final shape at the beginning of such a big project, so you have to have constantly structures to work on this. You have to have people who will work on adopting this software at the sites, and you need to be prepared for it. It's not just deliver great software, but you need to have trainers. You need to have people who will go to the sites and prepare people to start using the software and so on. There's a whole machinery of program management structures, scrum masters, safe ceremonies that need to happen for such a big Agile project, to have the least of overhead, but yet still all the levels need to be satisfied. And in the end, you're planning a software release in a very controlled environment. So with all this crowd, with all this organization, you still need to be able to do this in a controlled way and with very quick turnaround in the end, right?
So it's about digital transformation. It's about working and partnering with client. It's about trust, but it's not like we are delivering such projects on a daily basis, right? It's not like such wonderful things happen all the time.
Oh no, you can say even that, at least from my point of observation, I can say such projects happens once in 20 years, I guess. And this is how long it took us to get to the level where you spin off a project for 200 people in a couple weeks, which is transforming your own company, transforming the core part of business on the client side. Yeah, very, very rare thing. However, it also emphasizes the sense of doing other things. So I believe all we did so far was enabling us and actually getting us on a journey to be able to be trusted with such a big work in such a interesting times. So I guess, like the saying says, everything is for a reason. Sometimes we just don't know the reason yet.
All right, just embrace it.
Correct.
Okay, so thanks very much. Thanks for having the time to be here and talk about your experiences and your 20 years at C&F and one of the most interesting projects in our history. So thanks, Piotr, for being here.
Thank you as well.
Thank you very much, and see you soon in the next episode of C&F Talks.